Hi, I'm Peggy Oliveira. Welcome to my first video blog. I decided to try this way of blogging because, well, I have some difficulty writing and I've been trying to keep up with my blog for a while now, and I find that I keep getting caught up in rewriting everything that I'm trying to say. So I thought that this might be a little bit easier for me to convey the thoughts and topics that I want to talk about. And I'm really hoping to help facilitate discussion and conversation. I really want this to be a forum for people to get information and hopefully the support that they'd like to have. And that happens best when there are other people participating in the process. So I hope this might help create or facilitate some of that conversation. I also decided to do this for this particular blog post because this post is going to be a little bit more personal in nature, and I thought doing a video might just feel a little bit more genuine to me. Since I talk for a living, talking comes generally relatively easily for me, though on video it's a little bit intimidating. But I'm just hopeful that it will be a little bit more natural for me to do it this way. So this blog post is called Opening Up, and in this post I'm going to talk a little bit about sexual abuse and impact of sexual abuse, and through that I will be talking a little bit more about, a little bit of my personal history. So for those of you who have had me as a therapist, who maybe are currently seeing me or may consider seeing me in the future, if you don't want to know more about your therapist, then this might not be a great video for you to watch. For the rest of you, I am hopeful that in sharing a little bit more about myself and the topic that I'm going to be talking about, that it may help you feel maybe supported, connected, maybe a little bit less alone. One of the most damaging aspects of sexual abuse as a child is the isolation that it creates. And as more and more people talk about it, it helps break some of that isolation. It makes it a little bit easier to talk about. And in my field, it's whether or not to share certain things about yourself is a pretty hotly debated topic, because there are some people who think that you really shouldn't share anything about yourself, that you need to be a complete blank slate. And on the other side of that spectrum, there are people who think that you should share everything about yourself. I tend to fall probably, it's interesting actually because it's probably changed over the years that I've been doing this work. I definitely think that there can be value and a place to share personal information. And I have over the years. When people ask me personal questions, I'm pretty honest and willing to answer their questions. I've never had anybody ask a question that was inappropriate or anything like that, so I've not been faced with that. But one of the questions I'm often asked is whether or not I have a personal experience with sexual abuse, because the majority of people I work with have a history of sexual abuse. And so, of course, having that experience creates significant issues with trust, and the idea of going to therapy for so many people can be incredibly intimidating and overwhelming. And so some people have come right out and asked in the very beginning whether or not I was sexually abused. Some people want to ask the question but don't, because they feel that it's not appropriate, that it's too personal, that they might upset me or something like that. And so I would say the majority of people really never ask. But I have found over the years that for whatever reason, when I have shared something personal, and that could be anything from struggling with my relationship or difficulty parenting, my educational process because I was not a traditional student, or of course my experience with sexual abuse. When I have shared those things, it seems to really help facilitate our relationship, and I think part of that is because people feel like they can trust that I will likely understand and maybe be less likely to judge them. And that certainly doesn't mean that somebody who doesn't have a history of sexual abuse would judge or wouldn't be able to help them incredibly well. But I think that when you've been victimized in that way and you're just starting the process, it just can feel a little bit more comfortable if you think the person that you're talking with might have a little bit of a better understanding. So I do share when people ask that I do have a history of sexual abuse. That's pretty much all I ever really share. I don't necessarily need to go into a lot of detail, but sometimes people do ask a little bit more. You know, it's interesting that actually one of the things that I end up sharing the most with clients is my educational process, because as I said, I was not a traditional student. So when I talk about being a high school dropout and going back to school and how scary that was for me, it helps people to feel like even though they may not think that they're smart enough or good enough or whatever it might be to try to accomplish their goals, in hearing how difficult that was for me, and yet here I am being able to do something that I really love doing, it helps them to feel that maybe they can do it too, and I am happy to give them some support in that way. So I, like many of my clients, and like unfortunately many of the women in our culture, actually across the world, I too have a history of child sexual abuse. I was sexually abused from the age of 5 through 15 by 3 different people. Not all at this, well, a couple of them happened I guess at the same time, but not all 3 people abused me for 10 years. One person abused me for about 8 years, and then I was abused during that time by another person, and then at 14 years old I was abused again, 15 years old I was abused again. So that isn't actually that different than many of the clients that I see, which I think is one of the really difficult things that people struggle with when they don't talk about it. Many people who have been sexually abused have been abused by more than one person throughout their childhood, and it could have even been like a boyfriend when they were 14 or 15 years old, or maybe even older. But oftentimes people do have more than one abuser, and when you do, it really reinforces the idea that there has to be something wrong with you. Why else would it happen not only once or by one person, but more than one person? So in sharing that, it also, or even just sharing the fact that that actually is fairly common, can help people feel a little bit more comfortable. During my childhood, I was also raised by a mother who was, though undiagnosed, pretty clinically depressed. And because of that, she was actually pretty neglectful as a mom, meaning that she didn't really provide the nurturance, the support, the affection, the attention that children need. And that is a much more subtle form of abuse, but really no less impactful in some ways, very significantly, in most ways actually very significantly impactful. And the reason I'm talking about that is because, again, like many people, when there's been abuse in your life, it's often not just, unfortunately, one type of abuse. Often there's other kinds of abuse or dysfunction, at least, going on in your life. And the combination of all of that together is devastating to your sense of self. And because of that, you end up having a life as an adult that is not what you would probably like it to be, and is probably not at all the life that you deserve to be having. And that's one of the reasons why I really try to encourage people to go to therapy, because unfortunately, when you've been sexually abused, or really abused in any way as a child, you don't necessarily think that it's affected you, or at least not significantly. Maybe it's because you've used denial or minimization, rationalizing as a way of coping, or maybe literally completely blocked it out. But you tend to think that, okay, that happened, but it was a long time ago, it wasn't that big of a deal, he was drunk, whatever the case may be. And so you tell yourself that it wasn't really that big of a deal in whatever way that you might do that. And in doing that, you really invalidate the difficulty that you end up having. One of the things that is most common in somebody who's been sexually abused is a very poor sense of self-worth. And when you don't have a good sense of self, you end up making decisions in your life that are really not great decisions for you. Whether that is doing things that are self-destructive, like drugs or alcohol, not pursuing your dreams, not taking care of yourself in the ways that you need to be taken care of. It could be choosing unhealthy relationships, not going after the job that you want, not finding healthy friendships. All of these different ways that, or behaviors, choices that people make, people tend to think that, well, I'm just an idiot, or I just don't know how to make good decisions, or I deserve all these things to happen to me in my life. And that's obviously just not the truth, but that's what you tell yourself. And when you separate your abuse experience from the difficulties that you have as an adult, it's not about blaming anybody, and it's certainly not about excusing anything, but in identifying that there might be a connection, it allows you the opportunity to heal that. And if you can heal that, you naturally begin to make decisions, choose things in your life that are good for you. And while I had a difficult childhood, where I am today is someplace that I never imagined I could be. And it's not that my life is perfect. No life is ever perfect. And it's not that I'm even always happy 100% of the time. But what is different is that I was able to let go of the beliefs that I held onto throughout my life from what happened to me. I was able to let go of that and begin to believe in what is true for me. And it was through that process that I recognized that I wasn't the only person. Anybody I've ever known, even in my personal life, who has been sexually abused has struggled in so many of the same ways that I did. And in recognizing that, in recognizing how, understanding that, and understanding how the abuse affected me, and how I was able to change through that process, made me want to help other people understand that too. And it's, like I said, it's not that my life is perfect, but what is different is that when there are things that are going on in my life that aren't great, or even when I look back on the past, I look at it from a very different perspective. I look at it from a perspective of a very healthy person who is able to put things in perspective, instead of looking at it from the perspective of everything being my fault and being undeserving. And it is my hope in doing this work that I am able to help other people see that too. And I've been fortunate enough over the years to work with so many incredible people who have allowed me to be a part of their journey in healing. And through that process, I have seen some incredible changes that people have made in their lives. From just, ending a healthy relationship to going back to school and choosing the career that they want. Some have even gone into the field of social work and counseling. Some have gone into politics, and it's just so humbling, exciting, and rewarding to be able to witness such incredible change in people's lives just by understanding who they really are, not who they thought they were because of what they believed about their abuse. And that's one of the biggest aspects of healing and this process, is when you are sexually abused. I use this analogy, I guess, when I'm talking to somebody about how abuse affects somebody and how you work on healing. When you are abused, whether it was one time or 100 times, but that very first time that you were abused, let's say that your life is on this, when you're born, however you want to think about it, but let's say you're on this trajectory of your life, and you're kind of going along, and maybe there's a little of this and that, but when you're abused, sexually abused in particular, it kind of takes you off a little bit. And even if it's just one time, obviously the more that it maybe happens, the more violent it might be, the more the level of betrayal, that kind of thing, it could take you off further and further. And you kind of end up going off, kind of wandering through life, not having any sense of who you really are. And the process of healing, the decision to heal, and the process of that healing helps you come back to that original trajectory of your life that, had you not been abused, you would have continued on to. And there's a quote that I love, and I use it on everything, so those of you who know me know it well, but it's from George Eliot, which is actually a pen name of Mary Ann Evans, and the quote is, "It's never too late to become what you might have been." And obviously that's relevant to so many different people for so many different reasons, but when I read that, it just immediately connected for me what happens when somebody's been sexually abused in that trajectory and you kind of go off. The idea of becoming what you were meant to be is about finding your path again and learning who that person is. Learning who you really are, who you've always been, but have not been able to recognize because there's so much clouding it, there's so much pain and disappointment and hurt and false beliefs about who you are and the world around you. So, my point in all of this, and sharing my own personal story with you, is that it really is never too late. I have worked with people from childhood through almost 80 years old was the oldest client I've worked with, and it is never too late. It doesn't matter what mistakes you've made. It doesn't matter how hurt you've been. It is really never too late to have the life that you deserve to have, that you haven't been able to know was there waiting for you. So whether you are able to work with me or wherever you are in the country, please don't give up on the possibility of having that life that you deserve, that is waiting out there for you. If I can be of help, no matter where you are, of helping you find somebody who might be able to help you in that process, I would be happy to do so. You can contact me through email or you can give me a call. My website is www.courageousjourneys.com, and I will do my best to try to help you find somebody. I definitely would recommend that if you have a history of sexual abuse, that you try to find somebody who really focuses on that particular issue. So not just trauma in general, but somebody who works specifically with sexual abuse. And there's a lot of different ways of working in sexual abuse, and one of the most popular things that people are doing now is EMDR. And some people have found that helpful, and I've worked with a lot of people who have said that it didn't really help heal the wounds of sexual abuse. And so EMDR may be very beneficial to you, but I would encourage you to make sure that that person also has a lot of experience in working with child sexual abuse. So good luck to you. Please feel free to comment, ask questions. I will do my best to help, and I really do hope that this becomes a conversation that we can all participate in. So thanks for listening, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.